The lightship has gone into history. It's a tourist attraction moored in dock or on land. But the notion of what you're undertaking as a career, as duty, if you volunteer to serve on a lightship, is something that I think is unknown in the 21st century. And the bravery, the integrity, and the very strength of mind of these men is something that is probably quite unfathomable today. You are totally at the mercy of the forces of nature. Your lightship is immovable. It doesn't have a means of propulsion. And there was nothing you could do if something was in your way to prevent it from hitting you. And sometimes in peacetime, this would be great vessels of the sea would cut a lightship in half by accident. But during wartime, it was mines. And there was very little that lightship keepers could do if a mine came in their direction. And you can imagine the terror that the crew must have been enveloped in, seeing this black, spiky object coming closer and closer to them. Normally, a way of dealing with a mine at sea was to try and use a rifle shot to explode one of the horns on the mine and detonate it away from the location that it was coming towards. But in this case, they're not armed. There's nothing they can do. They can just wait and hope and pray. Now, sometimes we were able to put a boom out, a longish object, and gently poke the mine away and hope that it went in a different direction. But that's the exception rather than the rule. And so you're completely at the mercy of the world around you, which makes lightship crews absolutely heroic in what they do.
I was away on a coaster and I got a letter from my dad, and he said, would you not think of coming home and join the lightships? He said you'd have more time at home with your family. So I went to Dublin, got the interview, and they told me, yeah, you can have the job. And that's how I started.
I went away to sea when I was 17. I went into the Royal Navy, and I'd done my 9 years in the Royal Navy. And when I came out, I spent a little time ashore. I had a shore job, which I didn't like, but I had got married as well, and the job on the Connie Beg came up, and I took it, I was delighted to get back to sea.
And at that time, years gone by, work wasn't very great to come by. So you had to take what was going. A lightship man was always considered a good job.
I remember them all coming ashore. When they'd come in, they'd have to have their uniforms on. And of course, years ago, anybody in the uniform was kind of looked up to. But back even in the 1800s, it was a great job because it was pensionable. And there weren't many pensionable jobs going then.
There was a lot of Wexford people there who had a lot of connections with the lighthouses and lightships. And so it seemed the natural thing for me to do, was to go into the lightships. There was a Higginbottom and the Hook Lighthouse in the 1700s, so that goes back a bit.
There were so many lightship men and lighthouse keepers, particularly lightship men, in Irish Lights, manning all the lightships, that they were known as the Wexford Navy.
Phil Cullen from Wexford Town has spent 10 years on the lightships, 6 of them on the Conning Beg. Phil, what is life like on a lightship?
Life is very good on a lightship. We have our hobbies and all there. Make mats, ships and bottles, play cards, bit of fishing.
Miles Doyle of Wexford. Miles, how do you spend your time on board the lightship?
Well, there's various things I do, put ships in bottles, and we play cards a lot, and of course that's when we're off duty.
What do you do with all these ships and bottles?
Well, we have plenty of friends we give them to, presents and here and there,
You can go into a lonely part in your head, and if you haven't got a hobby, it's even worse, so.
After being at sea and moving around from port to port and place to place, and then you suddenly realise where you are, and God almighty, what am I doing here and stuck in this spot, It hits you hard, for the first few weeks anyway. But sure, you'd have to get used to it,
I suppose most of the time, there's only 2 of you on watch, so the rest of them are trying to get some sleep at that time or whatever to do, but You know, you can have your little arguments out there as well, like, you know, it's like any ship, like, you know, it's, people fall out as well, like, you know, so.
They were doing a month on and a month off. But you had to buy your own food, you see. And when you joined the ship, you were given 2 baskets, 2 wicker baskets. And when you're going out to join the ship, you'd bring out 1 basket with 2 weeks' food with you. When the fortnight was up, then the other basket had come out with the second fortnight's provisions in it. And the bread you'd have to put down into the chain locker, which is the deepest part of the ship, hopefully to keep it fresh. But by the time you'd be ready to eat it at the end of the 2 weeks, you were cutting 2 inches of blue mould off of it. And believe me, it wasn't nice.
You married?
I am not, no.
Find me here saying that it won't be long until you are married.
That's right.
What does the future wife think about you spending most of your time on a lightship?
Well, she'd rather have me on shore, but as she said I love the sea too much for her to give it up, so I have to stay where I am.
Your whole idea was to get home and get back to the family, and your heart would be up in your mouth till that tender was alongside and you got into her.
Captain Jim Boschel, you have just been relieved. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels very good indeed. It feels very good. We're always happy to get ashore, you know, after our sojourn on board, our duty on board, and we look forward to, especially, this is the Christmas Liberty, and we enjoy it very much.
Most of the time now you'd get your relief on time, but it could turn nasty too. Maybe you could be 2 or 3 days maybe waiting on a relief.
On one occasion, I was going to the Fastnet, and the weather was bad, and the Daunt Lightship relief was brought together because of the weather. And there was 5 men, I think, going out and 5 men coming in relief on the Lightship. I'd never seen anything like this before. I was a young lad, but I wasn't down on the service. But the lantern of the Lightship was really swaying over and back, and the sea was coming level with the deck and down again like that. And I saw the men that were coming ashore, and they jumped off the deck of that to a boat that was coming up against them, and a wave of whitewash water between them and the ship. And they wouldn't be allowed to do it today. Safety wouldn't, no way they could do it. But I remember I thought, oh, God, they're brave men.
You're at the mercy of the sea for starters, like, you know, and then most lighthouses, like, are on land. And they can go off and they can go up to the pub and have a pint, like, you know, if they want to. I mean, we can just look in at the land and look at other people going up to the pub.
And, you know, the life they had on lightships, bad enough as it was with us, we were on solid. But if you can imagine you're aboard a ship, normally a ship will go with the sea one way or the other or both ways. But when you're in a lightship, there's an anchor chain and you're stationary. And so you're going this way and that way. All as one. And every now and then the anchor chain will pull tight and you get surge and you get fecked right up along the deck wherever you happen to be. Your lunch could go flying off the table.
Well, you get a jerk on it, like, you know, as soon as the sea rises, like, you know, you're pulled on it and it drops then as well, and then you're back up again, like, you know. So there's not much sleep to be got in bad weather on lightships, like, you know. So. It came to an end when the Irish Lights introduced the Lambie buoy, which was an automatic buoy, like, you know. They just took the lightship off and put the Lambie buoys in instead of them, like, you know. So that was the end of that.
It is the policy of the commissioners to withdraw these over a phased period. We are replacing it with a high focal plane buoy, which we find that with modern navigational techniques on board vessels and facilities on board ships, we should be adequate, together with other radio beacons which we are establishing at the old head of Kinsale and at Ballycotton Lighthouse.
The loss of the Puffin lightship on the Daunt Rock in October 1896, I think, is one of those Victorian tales that you could develop out into a film. I mean, it encompasses all of the tragedy and progress of Victoriana and the Victorian era. The Puffin lightship is a modern double-hulled lightship. It's at the apex of lightship technology, moored off the Cork coast on the Daunt Rock. It's only just in station, and it's a triumph of Victorian engineering.
In 1896, it was a very violent storm. It was the worst storm in living memory to hit the Cork coast. And Puffin lightship, of course, was out on station. And there was a Coast Guard man came down just to make sure his boat was clear of the waves coming in. And he saw the light of the lightship at 4:30 in the morning. But by the time he had gone home, he said there was no light there.
It's lost, it vanishes, it's gone. Initially, stories fly around the Cork area that Puffin is safe. Puffin has been seen down the coast, floating off Tramore, moored off Tramore. It's okay.
But as the days passed, 2 lightship men's caps and 2 oars from their own lifeboat with the name of the Puffin burned into the oars, washed up on the beach.
Puffin has been overwhelmed by the power of the sea, and the men are lost.
The loss of the Puffin was one of the worst tragedies that Irish Lights had. That's why they needed to get the wreck back. They really needed to find out what happened, because the same thing they were afraid might happen to the other lightships around.
The events that lead to the discovery of the wreck of the Puffin, I think, again show so much about the Victorian world. There's using technology to find her, divers, in what we now consider very primitive technology, down into very dangerous waters, risking life and limb while searching for the wreck of Puffin.
The classic old movies will show you the kind of diving suits that these guys had, with a big metal helmet on it and a glass, a circular thing, and that have a big pipe and a motor pushing air into it. And these guys were sent down 90 foot. It's very hard to see any significant distance, particularly if there had been a storm not too long beforehand, because it'll be keeping the water muddy. The thing that amazes me is down there that they actually found it.
Puffin is found and is refloated. And there's an inquiry in Dublin into why Puffin sank. And there's all sorts of rumours and stories. And was she hit by a liner? Was it a sea monster that did it? But it comes down to structural defects in the end.
The most likely thing that happened, it was a hollow mast with a ladder up inside it where they hoisted up the lantern up the mast. It was 27 feet up. Now that lantern was 2.5 tons weight. So you can imagine the pressure that had.
The mast was ripped off by the storm, and in ripping off, it removed some of the superstructure, and that allowed the water to go in, and the 8 men on board didn't stand a chance. It's a really poignant example of how the sea and technology and human nature all interact within the context of Irish Lights. And it also brings up, particularly in this context of a lighthouse service, just how dangerous it was to be a lightship man. Is a very, very difficult form of life.
In 1982, the few remaining lightship keepers came ashore for the last time, when the lightship automation process was complete. The Gannet was the last lightship operating in Irish waters, located at the South Rock off the County Down coast. In 2009, the Gannet was decommissioned and towed away to Dunleary by the Irish lightship, the Gráinne Whale. Nearly 300 years after the first lightship had been anchored in Dublin Bay, It was the end of a distinguished chapter in the history of Irish lights.